I remember the first time I went to JROTC 6, the guy in the front seat was a good friend of mine named Dick Davis. He was a great harmonica player, he's a good musician, and he lives down in Benson, Arizona. He's retired too. But we get close to the target area, and it's a beautiful day, sun shining, and I look out on the ground and I see all these sparkly things. I said, "Hey, Dick, what's all that sparkly stuff on the ground?" He said, "Son, those are muzzle flashes." My sense of urgency went right through the top of the canopy. During my combat tour, I got into one good big fight. We were flying in a flight of 4 F-4s loaded with missiles and a gun and everything. And we were escorting a strike force of F-105 fighter bombers. And we were about 30 miles or so southwest of Hanoi, trailing the strike force. And the JROTC Airborne Combat Control Center calls us up and says, "Hey, you got blue bandits coming out of," I think it was Fujian, one of the enemy airfields up there. Blue bandits MiG-21, red bandits are MiG-19 or 17. But I know the blue bandits were MiG-21s. So here we got these 2 MiG-21s coming for us. The flight leader, a guy by the name of Bernie Boguslavsky, Bogey we called him, the gentleman Polak, called for us to punch off the external fuel tanks. That way there's less drag on the airplane. It will accelerate quicker, it'll maneuver better, and it will go faster without those external wing tanks. So we punched them off. He starts to climb. And as we're going through 34,000 feet, we look below us, and these 2 MiG-21s come singing by right beneath us. And he split S's the flight. That is, you roll on your back and pull the airplane in a dive. It's a split S. Back behind these 2 MiGs. They split. One of them went, we don't know where, maybe home. The other one wound up leading a 5-ship flight. And the other 4 were Phantoms, and everybody was shooting. And we shot 15 missiles at that MiG. In my airplane, we shot 3, all 3 of them missed. And the guy that got him shot only 1. He shot a Singleton AIM-7 radar-guided missile. I happened to be looking over my shoulder at his airplane. It was the number 4 guy in the flight, by the way. And I saw the missile drop out of the missile well on the belly of the airplane. I saw the rocket motor ignite, and I tracked the smoke trail until it hit that MiG at the trailing edge of the left wing root. And it exploded, of course. And the airplane pitched up, and then the fuselage forward of the wing pitched back down. And just about that instant, the JROTC calls us off to go do something else. So I didn't see the airplane crash, but I know it did. And I didn't see the guy, I didn't see the parachute. And I have no idea whether he got out of it or not. I kind of doubt it, because it was a huge explosion. That was really exciting. On the way home, since everybody had been shooting, the flight leader, Bogey, he pulls the flight. He says, "All right, who got the MiG?" Everybody claimed the MiG. even my aircraft commander got it. If I see my airplane, we got it. But we get back to the base. We go into the flight briefing room, and we have a long discussion about that. And it was decided, and I know in my heart that's the way it worked out, that number 4, Bobby Bowles, and his pit band, another buddy of mine named Butch Batista, were the ones who got that MiG. Because I watched the missile hit it. I watched it come off of Bobby's airplane, and I watched the missile hit the guy. I finished my combat tour and got reassigned to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base down in Tucson. And I was supposed to go down there and learn how to fly the front seat of the Phantom, which was a wonderful thing. I forgot to mention that while I was over there, they started putting the first combat navigators in the back seat. Don James and Rod Cox came over and were assigned to my squadron. Well, I think Don was actually assigned to wing, but Rodney was assigned to my squadron. They were navigators, they were not pilots. And they were delighted to be able to fly a combat airplane. And us pilots stuck in the back seat were delighted to just move over and let them have it. That meant we could get on up in the front cockpit that much sooner. But I got lucky. At first I had an assignment to Bentwaters Air Base in England. And I was going to be a backseat pilot again over there. But the Air Force, in its infinite wisdom, decided to try an experiment. So they constructed a class, an F4 transition class down at DM with 15 former Gibbs like me, Gibb guy in the backseat, and 15 guys right out of pilot training to train for the front cockpit, and 30 brand new navigators right out of the navigator training at Mayfair Air Force Base. And I guess they just wanted to know if it did a guy any good to go through the back seat of the F4. If that's what they were looking for, they got their answer, because the top gun in our class was one of the brown bars out of pilot training. A guy named Ron Keyes. He was a good buddy of mine. He and I kept crossing paths in the Air Force together. I'll tell you a story about him. We were stationed on Okinawa together a few years later. And from Okinawa, we were TDY over at Taiwan at Ching Chuan Kong Air Base. CCK we call it, because nobody can pronounce Ching Chuan Kong. And Ron had been to the fighter weapons school, and he was an instructor pilot, and they sent him out one day with a wing commander, single ship. And they were going to do an aircraft handling mission. That's where you just take the airplane out, and you ring it out, you fly it slow, and you fly it fast, and you pull a lot of G's and stuff like that. Well, they're doing a particularly ticklish maneuver with the airplane, and the wing code gets it into a spin. And good old Ron Keyes, I didn't care who was in his front seat, he's the IP on board, he says, I got it. Normally the way you recover from a spin in an F4 is you pop the drag chute. And when that chute blossoms off the tail of the airplane, it snatches the nose down, and the airplane starts to accelerate, pretty soon you're flying again. You can also get a recovery without having to use the drag chute, but it's much more difficult. Well, my little buddy Ron Keyes got a recovery, an aerodynamic recovery, without losing the drag chute, using the drag chute. So just about the time the airplane stops rotating, and they're about 10,000 feet, the wing co, for some unknown reason, stuffs in a whole boot full of opposite rudder, and she wraps up back in the other direction. Well, they're 10,000 feet, and the book says if you're at 10,000 feet and in a spin, punch out. Because if you don't punch out that high up, you're not going to have enough room. That thing's descending so fast, you're not going to have enough space to get under a deployed parachute before you hit the surface. So they punched out, spent the night in their little rubber dinghies in the East China Sea. And the base that we were TDY at had C-130s, and so we hollered for help. They sent a couple of C-130s out there, and they located him. We got emergency radios and stuff like that, you know. And they whistled up a Jolly Green Giant CH-53 helicopter to come get him. Picked him up out of the water, took him up to the Navy hospital in Taipei, and then they came back to CCK the next day. Wrote a song about that. Well, anyhow, I learned how to fly the front seat of the F4. And I was sent PCS to Holloman Air Force Base, now in Gordo, New Mexico. And as soon as I got there, there was a whole bunch of us, about 6 or 8 guys. And the wing was gone. They were TDY in Germany. The Russians had just invaded Czechoslovakia. It was 1968. And there was a thing going on in Czechoslovakia known as the Prague Spring. You may have seen the term. And that didn't set well with the Soviet Union, so they sent the tanks in. So we didn't know if we were going to go to war with the Russians over that or not, but they sent us guys on over to Spain. We spent 48 days there. And the weather in Europe is terrible. The 48 days that I was there, we had sunshine, I think, on 40 of those days. Interesting part of that trip was when we came back from over there, they let me fly Phantom back. But I was a brand new guy in the front seat, so they wouldn't let me fly in the front seat. They put me in the back seat with another more experienced guy in the front seat. Sitting in an anti-exposure garment, also known as a poopy suit. It's like a rubber garment that starts here at the neck, goes all the way to your ankles. And it's tight fit around the wrists, around the ankles, and around the neck. And once you get suited up in that thing, you're going to be in it for a while. And if you have to have any kind of a physiological event, that's going to take place inside it. Oh, the trick is you don't drink any coffee that morning before you go aboard the airplane, and you be careful what you eat. 11 hours and 40 minutes from gear up to gear down, all the way from Spangdahlem, Germany to Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico. Long, long trip. Good news is we were chasing the sun. It was while I was at Holloman I recorded my first album of military folk songs. A little recording studio over in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which was about 90 miles down the road from where I was stationed. It's up just north of El Paso. From Holloman I was sent to Misawa Air Base, Japan. Well, this is Yvonne, this is me. We were welcoming the new wing commander. The new wing commander was Buck Patillo. He had a twin brother, the Patillo twins, and they flew on a Thunderbird to somebody's precision flight team. Luther Carver was one of my buddies. Roger Hellwig. He went back for a second tour and crashed on a combat mission. Ron Markey. Rod Cox, one of our first combat wizzos. He's passed away too. And a pretty little tight girl over here is a gal named Tippy. She was the manager of the Oak Club Bar and a very important person in our life. Let's see. Next slide. Okay, this was the big story. And then the next one. This was the patch I wore while I was upgrading the front seat of the Phantom. This is Mr. Hot Rock himself sitting in the front seat of the Phantom at Holloman Air Force Base with his brain bucket on the canopy sill. Next one. And as I said, I recorded my first album while I was there, and this is a little publicity picture today. This is the cover. It was in vinyl. You know, nobody does vinyl.
I don't know what that means.
It's a big plastic disc. It's got 8 or 10 songs on it. It's got 2 sides, usually about 12 songs on a vinyl disc. I still got a bunch of them. You just wait till the antique roadshow comes to town. I want to cash it. 67th Squadron. Okay, the slides are caught up with us. We're at Misawa Air Base, Japan. And this was the squadron I was assigned to, the Fighting Cocks. Next slide. Then I was there for 7 months, and they closed down the fighter wing, and they sent the airplanes to Korea. And all the guys who did not have a remote tour went with the airplanes. But I had my tour in Thailand, so I had a remote tour. And they sent me and the other guys like me down to Okinawa to the 18th Tactical Fighter Wing. And their symbol was also a fighting cock. Although with his wings raised up like that, we called him the surrendering chicken. Next slide. I was assigned to the 44th Tactical Fighter Squad, and I had several different jobs there, and a great bunch of guys to work with. While I was there, I had an opportunity to go to the Fighter Weapons School at Nellis. The great dream and ambition of every fighter pilot in the U.S. Air Force is to attend a fighter weapons instructor course. And I got really lucky, and one day my squadron commander came in and he says, "Jonas, go put in an extension. You're going to the fighter weapons school." So I was just happier than a dead pig in the sunshine, as my pop used to say. These were my classmates, and this was the airplane we flew. That's me, leading down over here. The guy next to me is a guy named Musciano, Dick Musciano. He and an instructor were up on a night mission during the course. At night on the north ranges, tactical ranges, and they were doing high angle dive, and they flew it into the ground. Never did find out. I never found out how they managed to do that. A couple of other casualties. This guy here is named Hank Frazier. He finished the course and went back to his home base at Torrejon, Spain, and he was doing a low-angle bomb delivery, and it's a shallow delivery and very close to the ground, very fast. And he plowed into the ground out beyond the target. Dickie Meacham, same story. He went back to his base. I forget where he was stationed, but he bought it 12 o'clock to the target. These two gents down on the right, our left end, are Israeli fighter pilots. This guy's name is Eitan Ben Eliyahu. He shot down 2 MiGs at that time. This was 1972. And the guy next to him is Asher Sneer, S-N-I-R. He shot down 10 MiGs. Asher wound up being promoted to 3 stars, and at one time, before he got out, he was the chief of staff of the Israeli Air Force. Really sharp guys. One day, Asher and Hank Frazier were doing a mission, and Hank was briefing it. He says, "All right, we got me and Asher here. Between the two of us, we got 10 MiGs." Of course, all 10 of them was Asher's. Great school, really tough. Toughest Air Force school I ever went to. We had 13 pilots and 6 NAVs that graduated, and I graduated number 13 of those 13 pilots. But I made it, and I got the patch. Next slide. Fighter Weapons Instructor Course patch. And today, when I perform, I have this fancy jumpsuit that I wear, and my Fighter Weapons School patch is always on my right shoulder. Okay, then After Okinawa, I was sent back to Luke Air Force Base. Everybody knows where Luke is? Okay. As an instructor in the F4. While I was there, I got my first look at the F-16. We had a really nifty wing commander. And one day he loaded up a bunch of us, and we flew in the base bird over to Edwards Air Force Base, where they were having the competition between the F-16, the YF-16 and the YF-17. And we got to look at them. I like the looks of the F-16, but the F-16 didn't have a stick, control stick, where it's supposed to be in the middle, right in front of the seat. It had the side stick controller over here. And the F-17 had it where the stick's supposed to be. So I told myself, that's the airplane I want to fly. Never have touched it. Well, the F-17 eventually became the F-18 anyway. But I got nearly 1,000 hours in the F-16, and I'm really glad it worked out that way. Honey of an airplane. Most fun you can have sitting down with clothes on. After Luke, I was sent to Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, to be a personnel staff officer, made major while I was there. And when I finished my 3-year tour, I got selected for staff school. See, the Air Force is really brilliant. They put me in a staff job for 3 years, and then they sent me to staff school. So I went to staff school. The Air Force Staff School was the intermediate staff school. It was Air Command and Staff College. But I got sent to an exchange assignment at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, on the other side of the